The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles under a dome of pure crystal. Representatives from 1,000 worlds sat in floating platforms, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some looked like walking trees, others like living metal, and a few resembled nothing more than clouds of glowing gas. At the center of it all stood Zektar, his forearms gesturing grandly as he spoke. His scaled hide gleamed purple under the artificial suns, and his voice carried the authority of 10,000 years of conquest. "Brothers and sisters of the Council," Zektar announced, his words translated instantly into 1,000 languages. "We gather today for our yearly review of primitive worlds. Most are not worth our time, but protocol demands we examine them all." A hologram appeared above the assembly, showing a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. The world spun slowly, showing white clouds, vast oceans, and brown-green continents. "This is the world the locals call Earth," Zektar continued, barely glancing at the display. "It sits in what they call the solar system, third planet from their star. Our scouts cataloged it 3 cycles ago." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Council's chief xenobiologist, floated forward on her platform. Her people, the Altarians, looked almost human except for their silver skin and large black eyes. She had studied hundreds of primitive species during her career. "The dominant species calls themselves humans," Elena reported, consulting her datapad. "They are carbon-based bipeds, averaging 1.7 meters in height. Their lifespan is remarkably short, only 70 to 80 local years. They reproduce sexually and raise their young in small family groups." A few council members chuckled at this. Most advanced species had long ago moved beyond such primitive reproductive methods. "Their technology is equally backward," Elena continued. "They still burn fossil fuels for energy, though they have discovered nuclear fission. Their space travel uses chemical rockets that barely reach their own moon. They have no faster-than-light capability and show no understanding of quantum tunneling or dimensional folding." Zektar waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Single-star system dwellers with chemical propulsion. How quaint. What of their government structure?" "That is where things become interesting," Elena said, her voice carrying a note of concern that most council members missed. "The humans are divided into nearly 200 separate nation-states. They have no unified world government. These nations frequently engage in warfare with each other." "Warfare?" asked Council Member Theiss, a being that looked like a giant butterfly with crystal wings. "Over resources?" "Sometimes," Elena replied, "but also over ideas, religions, territory that has no strategic value, and sometimes for reasons that make no logical sense. In their recent history, they fought a global war that killed over 60 million of their own species." The hall fell silent. Most council species had unified their worlds through logic and cooperation. The idea of killing millions of your own kind was almost incomprehensible. "Furthermore," Elena continued, "their rate of adaptation is unlike anything we have seen. In just 100 of their years, they went from horse-drawn transportation to nuclear weapons. In another 70 years, they reached their moon. They learn and change faster than any species in our records." Zektar's expression showed annoyance. Elena always complicated simple matters with her endless observations. "Doctor, your point being?" "My point is that we should monitor this species more carefully. Their aggression levels are off our charts. Their adaptability is remarkable. And they show signs of—" "Enough," Zektar cut her off. "Dr. Vasquez, you see threats where none exist. These humans are primitive savages who cannot even govern their own world properly. They fight with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Their fastest ships would take thousands of years to reach the nearest star." He turned to address the full council. "I move that we classify Earth as a Level 2 civilization. Minor technological development. No strategic value. Standard non-interference protocols will apply." Most council members nodded in agreement. Level 2 worlds were barely worth watching. They would either destroy themselves within a few centuries or slowly develop into something worth talking to in 1,000 years or more. But Elena was not finished. "Council leader, I must respectfully disagree. These humans have something I have rarely seen. Which is? They never give up. In their history, they have faced ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and countless wars. Each time they not only survive but come back stronger. They have a concept they call spite, the ability to keep fighting just to prove others wrong." Zektar's 4 eyes rolled in exasperation. "Doctor, you are being emotional. The humans are insignificant. Look at the facts. They are confined to one star system, fight among themselves constantly, and have technology centuries behind our own. They are no more dangerous than the tree dwellers of Zephyria or the hive minds of Kepler Station. But the tree dwellers unified their world through wisdom, Elena pressed. The hive minds through natural cooperation. Humans unify through conflict. When they have a common enemy, they become something else entirely. A common enemy like what? They cannot even leave their solar system. Elena hesitated, then spoke quietly. Like us. The hall erupted in laughter. The idea that a species that still used gunpowder could threaten the Galactic Council was absurd. Even their newest member civilizations had fusion power and antimatter weapons. Zektar raised his hands for silence. The good doctor's concerns are noted but irrelevant. Earth receives a Level 2 classification. File them under eventual integration for review in 1,000 standard years. Perhaps by then, they will have developed something more interesting than chemical rockets. The vote was unanimous, except for Elena's dissent. As the council moved on to the next primitive world, Elena studied her private notes about humanity. She had watched their entertainment broadcasts, studied their literature, analyzed their military history. What she saw there troubled her. Humans had a phrase, never poke a sleeping bear. But the council did not understand what that meant. They saw only a small blue world with primitive technology, and assumed it would always be that way. Elena knew better. She had seen how humans reacted when threatened. She had watched their documentaries about something they called World War II, when the entire planet had chosen sides and fought with everything they had. She had read their stories about last stands and impossible victories. The humans had another phrase Elena remembered. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. As the session ended and representatives began returning to their worlds, Elena made a private note in her files. She would keep watching Earth even if the council would not. Something told her that in the vast galaxy full of ancient civilizations and powerful empires, the small blue world might surprise them all. Far away on that small blue world, a young woman named Sarah Chen looked up at the stars through a telescope. She was studying to become an astronaut, dreaming of the day humans would travel between the stars. She had no idea that alien eyes were watching her world, or that those aliens had dismissed her entire species as unimportant. But Sarah had something the aliens did not expect. She had human determination, human curiosity, and human stubbornness. And someday the galaxy would learn what that meant. The council had made their first mistake. They had underestimated Earth. It would not be their last. 50 years had passed since the Galactic Council dismissed Earth as a minor world. The galaxy had been busy with bigger concerns, wars between ancient empires, trade disputes that affected entire star sectors, and the rise of the hegemony as the dominant military power. Nobody was watching the small blue planet in the solar system. They should have been. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the UES Endeavour, humanity's first starship capable of faster-than-light travel. Through the reinforced windows he could see the trading station called Haven's Rest, spinning slowly against a backdrop of stars. "Hard to believe we made it this far," said his first officer, Lieutenant Commander James Park. 50 years ago, we were still using chemical rockets to reach the moon." Marcus nodded. The journey had been remarkable. After the development of fusion power in the 2390s, everything had changed. Clean energy led to massive space construction projects. The moon became humanity's first major colony, followed by Mars, then the outer planets. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen, figured out how to fold space using quantum tunneling. It was crude compared to galactic standard technology, but it worked. Humanity could finally reach the stars. "Remember," Marcus told his crew over the intercom, "this is first contact with galactic civilization. We represent all of humanity. Be respectful, be curious, and listen more than you talk." The Endeavour docked at Haven's Rest without incident. The station was a wonder of alien engineering. Living metal that grew and shaped itself. Gravity fields that worked without spinning sections, and energy systems that seemed to run on pure light. The first aliens they met were traders from a species called the Vorthan. They looked like walking octopi with beautiful color-changing skin. Their leader, a being named Quilth, greeted the humans with obvious amusement. "Humans?" Quilth's translator made his voice sound friendly but condescending. "From Earth, yes. We heard whispers that the tunnel rats had finally learned to dig between stars." Marcus kept his expression neutral despite the insult. "Tunnel rats? Oh, forgive me." Quilth's skin flushed what might have been embarrassment. local slang for species that stay in their home systems for so long. Most civilizations reach the stars within a few hundred years of developing technology. You took, how long? 2,000 years? Something like that, Marcus admitted. Quilth's skin brightened with what was clearly amusement. Well, better late than never. Come, let me show you our trade collective. Perhaps Earth has something interesting to offer the galaxy. The tour was educational. Haven's Rest hosted traders from dozens of species, all part of something called the Galactic Trade Collective. It was a loose organization of merchants who dealt in goods, services, and information across thousands of star systems. Marcus and his team observed everything carefully. The artificial gravity generators, the universal translators, the energy, weapons carried by station security, the star maps showing trade routes across the galaxy. They asked innocent questions and received detailed answers from traders happy to show off their knowledge to primitive newcomers. Your technology is quite impressive, Marcus told Quilth as they finished the tour. How do your artificial gravity generators work? Oh, simple quantum manipulation of local spacetime, Quilth replied carelessly. Any first-year engineering student could build one. Here, I will send the basic schematics to your ship's computer. Marcus managed not to smile. On Earth, teams of scientists had been working on artificial gravity for decades without success. Now they had the complete technical specifications freely given. You are very generous, Marcus said. Think nothing of it. Primitive species need help to catch up. Consider it charity. Quilth's skin showed pride. In exchange, perhaps you could tell us about Earth's trade goods? What does your world produce that might interest galactic markets? Marcus had been prepared for this question. We have artistic works, literature, music, some unusual foods and spices. Raw materials, though, I imagine those are common. Ah yes, the usual primitive exports, Quilth agreed. Still, cultural products can be quite valuable. The galaxy loves exotic entertainment. We would be happy to include Earth in the trade collective as a, what is the term? Novelty species. The classification stung, but Marcus kept his diplomatic smile. We would be honored. Over the following months, trade began between Earth and the galactic community. Human art, music, and literature proved surprisingly popular. Human coffee became a luxury item on dozens of worlds. Earth's diverse cultural heritage fascinated aliens who came from more unified societies. But the real trade was in knowledge. Every technical manual, every casual conversation about technology, every offhand comment about galactic politics was carefully recorded and analyzed. Humanity was learning at an incredible rate. Dr. Sarah Chen, now head of Earth's Department of Alien Affairs, reviewed the intelligence reports in her office overlooking the sprawling city of New Geneva. Humanity had built well in the past 50 years. The city stretched from the Swiss mountains to the Mediterranean coast, connected by fusion-powered transport tubes, and topped with orbital elevators reaching into space. The hegemony is making moves again, reported Agent Martinez, one of Sarah's intelligence officers. According to our sources at Haven's Rest, they've conquered 3 more star systems in the past year. Sarah studied the galactic map on her wall. The hegemony controlled nearly a quarter of known space, and they were expanding rapidly. Their military technology was centuries ahead of humanity's, and they had the resources of 100 conquered worlds. Any indication they're interested in human space? Sarah asked. None. As far as galactic intelligence knows, we're still too primitive to be worth conquering. The hegemony focuses on worlds with established infrastructure and advanced technology. We're classified as a novelty species and suppliers of art and coffee. Sarah smiled grimly. Let them think that. While the galaxy saw humans as harmless traders selling exotic goods, humanity was building. Fusion-powered shipyards operated around every planet in the solar system. The asteroid belts had been turned into massive mining operations. Mars had become humanity's military research center, its red deserts hiding weapons laboratories and training facilities. What about the other species? Sarah asked. The ones the hegemony has conquered? Refugees are scattered across the galaxy. Most end up in the outer rim systems, barely surviving. The hegemony doesn't just conquer, they break entire civilizations. Billions have died. Sarah's expression hardened. She had read the reports. The hegemony's method was simple and brutal. Overwhelming force followed by complete subjugation. They didn't negotiate, didn't offer terms, didn't show mercy. They simply took what they wanted and destroyed anything that resisted. Keep monitoring, Sarah ordered. And make sure our shipyards stay hidden. If the hegemony discovers what we're really building out here, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Humanity wasn't ready for a war with the galaxy's dominant military power. Not yet, but they were preparing. In the depths of space, human colonies grew stronger every day. Each world became a fortress, each orbital platform a potential weapons system. The species that had once fought world wars with chemical explosives was now building weapons that could crack planets. The galaxy still saw them as tunnel rats selling coffee and music. Soon, that would change. On a distant world called Altair Prime, the last free Altarian government received a message through secret channels. It was from a species called humans, offering refuge to any survivors of the hegemony's conquest. The Altarians had never heard of humans before. According to galactic records, they were a primitive species from a minor world called Earth. But the message was encrypted with mathematics that shouldn't have been possible for a primitive species to understand. And it came with star charts showing safe routes through space that even the Altarian military didn't know existed. Perhaps these primitive humans were more than they seemed, time would tell. The morning sun cast long shadows across the agricultural domes of New SETI colony as Lisa Park reviewed the daily reports. 50,000 humans called this world home, 12 light-years from Earth in the Tau SETI system. It was humanity's furthest colony, a peaceful farming world that supplied food to the growing human settlements throughout local space. Lisa had been colony administrator for 5 years, and she loved the quiet life. No traffic jams, no pollution, no crime worth mentioning, just good people working together to build something beautiful under alien stars. That peaceful morning ended when the sensors detected ships jumping into the system. Administrator Park, to the command center, Lisa said into her communicator as she ran from her office. The colony's small defense center was hidden beneath the main agricultural dome, disguised as a water treatment facility. Captain Torres, the colony's military commander, met her at the elevator. His face was grim. "Ma'am, we have 12 ships in system, large vessels, unknown configuration." Lisa's heart sank as they descended to the command center. Through the elevator's transparent walls, she could see the colony's peaceful daily routine continuing above. Children walking to school, farmers tending to the hydroponic gardens, engineers maintaining the fusion reactors. They had no idea what was coming. "Visual on screen," Torres ordered as they entered the command center. The main display showed space around Tau SETI. 12 massive ships hung in the darkness like metal sharks. Each vessel was over 2 kilometers long, bristling with weapons, and painted in the blood-red colors of the hegemony warfleet. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Chen. "Audio only." A harsh voice filled the command center, speaking accented galactic standard. "Attention, primitive colony. I am Admiral Vorth of the Hegemony Third Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare for inspection." Lisa took a deep breath. She had hoped this day would never come, but every human colony had prepared for it. "Open a channel." "This is Colony Administrator Lisa Park of New SETI Colony," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We are a peaceful, agricultural settlement. We have no military capabilities." Admiral Vorth's laughter was cold. "Peaceful? You harbor fugitives from hegemony justice. Our sensors detect Altarian life signs on your world. You will surrender them immediately." Lisa's blood ran cold. 3 months ago, a damaged Altarian refugee ship had limped into their system. The survivors, only 43 people from a world of billions, were the last free Altarians in the galaxy. Their planet had been one of the hegemony's recent conquests. The refugees were good people, scientists, teachers, a few children. They had asked only for sanctuary and the chance to preserve their culture. Lisa had given them citizenship without hesitation. "The beings you speak of are citizens of New SETI Colony," Lisa replied. "They are under our protection." "Your protection?" Vorth's voice dripped with amusement. "You are primitives with chemical rockets and metal bullets. You protect no one." Through the sensors, Lisa watched as the hegemony ships moved into attack formation. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level the entire colony in minutes. "Admiral, we have women and children here. Families. If you want the Altarians, take them. But please spare the innocent." "The innocent?" Vorth's voice turned cold. "There are no innocents who defy the hegemony. You had a choice, primitive. You chose poorly." The transmission cut off. Captain Torres was already at the tactical console. "Ma'am, recommend immediate evacuation to the underground shelters. Our orbital platforms might buy us a few minutes, but against a full fleet." Lisa looked around the command center at her people, farmers and teachers who had never expected to face a military crisis. They looked scared, but determined. "Captain, how long do we have?" "The fleet is moving into bombardment position." "Maybe 30 minutes. Lisa activated the colony-wide emergency broadcast system. Her voice echoed through every building, every dome, every tunnel. "Citizens of New SETI Colony, this is Administrator Park. We are under attack by forces of the hegemony. They have demanded we surrender our Altarian friends to them. I know what the hegemony does to conquered peoples. I know what they did to Altair Prime." She paused, thinking of the intelligence reports she had read. Entire cities turned to glass, populations enslaved or worse, cultures erased from history. We could surrender the Altarians and maybe save ourselves. We could abandon the people who came to us for help. But that's not who we are. We are human beings, and we stand with the innocent. We stand with our friends. We stand together. Throughout the colony, people stopped what they were doing to listen. "I won't lie to you, we can't win this fight, but we can show the galaxy who we are. We can show them that some things are worth dying for. All civilians report to underground shelters immediately. Military personnel prepare for defense." The evacuation began immediately. Families gathered their children and headed for the deep tunnels that every human colony built as standard procedure. The Altarian refugees tried to surrender themselves to save the humans, but Lisa's people wouldn't let them. "We're in this together," said Dr. Martinez, the colony's chief medical officer, as she helped load Altarian children into the evacuation tubes. "That's what humans do." Above ground, the colony's few defenses came online. 3 orbital weapon platforms, officially classified as mining equipment to avoid galactic attention, powered up their particle beam arrays. The colony's small fighter squadron launched from hidden bays beneath the agricultural domes. Captain Torres knew it was hopeless. 12 farmers in converted mining ships against the hegemony Third Fleet was like throwing rocks at a hurricane. But they would make the aliens work for their victory. The first hegemony bombardment began at 1430 local time. Beams of pure energy lanced down from space, turning the surface installations into molten craters. The orbital platforms managed to damage one hegemony cruiser before being destroyed. The fighter squadron lasted 3 minutes. Then the real bombardment began. From her command bunker 2 kilometers underground, Lisa watched the surface monitors go dark one by one. The fusion reactor, the communications array, the residential domes, everything humanity had built on this world was being systematically destroyed. "Transmission coming through on the emergency beacon," reported Communications Officer Chen. It's going out on all human frequencies." Lisa realized what was happening. The colony's automated distress system was broadcasting their final moments to every human settlement in known space. Earth would know what happened here. The other colonies would know. "Admiral Vorth to surviving primitives," came the hegemony commander's voice. "Your resistance is ended. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." Lisa looked around the command bunker at her people. They were scared, but their eyes held something else. Defiance. She activated the transmitter one last time. "This is Lisa Park, New SETI Colony. We are about to die, but we want the galaxy to know why. We were asked to betray friends who came to us for help. We refused. We were told to bow down to bullies and murderers. We refused. We stand with the innocent. We stand with the oppressed. We are human beings and we do not abandon our friends." She paused, thinking of Earth, of all the human worlds that would receive this message. They came for our friends. They burned our world. They think we're weak because we help refugees and stand up to tyrants. Let them learn what humans do when you threaten the innocent. Let them learn what happens when you back us into a corner. The last transmission ended as hegemony forces broke into the underground complex. But Lisa's message was already spreading across human space at faster than light speeds. Every human colony, every ship, every orbital station received the same transmission. New SETI Colony was gone. 50,000 humans and 43 Altarian refugees had died rather than surrender innocent people to the hegemony. On Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen read the report in her office. Around her, the lights of New Geneva sparkled in the growing darkness. Somewhere in the galaxy, a hegemony admiral thought he had just crushed a minor rebellion. He had no idea what he had actually done. Sarah activated her command console and began issuing orders. The largest military mobilization in human history was about to begin. The galaxy was about to learn what humans did when someone hurt their friends. 6 months after the destruction of New SETI Colony, the galaxy began to notice that something had changed in human space. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's first dreadnought-class warship. Through the armored windows, she could see the Ross 128 system where intelligence reports placed a hegemony task force. They were hunting down the last Altarian refugees, finishing the genocide they had started. Status report, Sarah ordered. Fleet is in position, replied Captain Torres, promoted after his heroic defense of New City. 12 dreadnoughts, 36 heavy cruisers, and 48 destroyers, all human-built, all crewed by volunteers. Sarah nodded. The mobilization had been incredible. Every human world had contributed ships, weapons, and people. Factories that once made farming equipment now produced plasma cannons. Miners became soldiers. Teachers became tacticians. The species that couldn't agree on anything had found unity in anger. Enemy fleet composition? Sarah asked. 24 ships total, 8 battleships, 16 escorts, standard hegemony formation. They expect easy prey. Sarah smiled grimly. Let them think that. Human ships didn't look like the elegant vessels favored by galactic civilizations. They were blocky, heavily armored, and built to take damage. More importantly, they were built by people who had learned warfare through thousands of years of conflict. All ships. This is Admiral Chen, Sarah broadcast on the fleet frequency. Remember New City. Remember why we're here. Today we show the galaxy what happens when someone hurts our friends. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Ross 128 system, like an avalanche of metal and fury. Admiral Korath of the Hegemony 4th Assault Group was reviewing casualty reports from his latest refugee hunt when his sensors officer announced the arrival of unknown ships. How many? Korath asked, not looking up from his datapad. 96 vessels, Admiral. Unknown configuration. That got Korath's attention. 96 ships was a significant force. Identification? They're human ships, sir. Korath's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. Human? The tunnel rats from that minor world? Yes, sir. They're broadcasting a message. Put it through. Sarah Chen's voice filled the Hegemony bridge. Hegemony forces, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. Korath's officers looked at each other in amazement. A primitive species was ordering the Hegemony to retreat? Human, Commander, Korath replied. You are clearly confused about your place in the galactic order. Withdraw your primitive vessels before we are forced to destroy them. Admiral Korath, Sarah's voice was cold as space. 6 months ago, your forces murdered 50,000 civilians on New City Colony. Today you answer for that crime. Korath laughed. Answer to whom? You? Your species still fights with chemical explosives and metal bullets. We have weapons that can turn your ships to atomic vapor. Then you'd better use them, Sarah replied, because we're coming for you. The human fleet began to advance. Korath was still amused rather than worried. Human ships were large, but size meant nothing against superior technology. His fleet's energy weapons could cut through any armor these primitives could build. All ships, target the lead vessels and fire, Korath ordered. The Hegemony fleet opened fire with concentrated energy beams that could punch through a kilometer of steel. The beams struck the lead human dreadnought and did nothing. What? Korath stared at his tactical display. How is that possible? His weapons officer was equally confused. Sir, their armor seems to be absorbing our energy weapons. I'm reading some kind of adaptive shielding. Korath's amusement vanished. Impossible. Adaptive shielding requires technology centuries beyond what these primitives possess. But the evidence was right there on his screens. Human ships were advancing through his fleet's concentrated fire without taking significant damage. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the human vessels are launching projectile weapons. Korath relaxed slightly. Projectile weapons were primitive, just metal slugs thrown through space. His ship's deflector screens would stop them easily. The first human missiles struck the Hegemony fleet 30 seconds later. They weren't metal slugs. Each missile carried a miniature fusion warhead and a guidance system that could think for itself. They struck the Hegemony ships in coordinated waves, overwhelming the deflector screens through sheer numbers and then detonating with the force of small suns. The Hegemony battleship Dominance lost its forward section to a single missile cluster. The cruiser subjugator simply vanished in a ball of nuclear fire. Evasive maneuvers, Korath screamed. How are their primitive missiles penetrating our defenses? His chief scientist, Dr. Zenthar, was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. Admiral, These aren't primitive weapons. The guidance systems are using quantum processing. The warheads are fusion antimatter hybrids. This is technology equal to our own. That's impossible, Korath raged. Our last intelligence report classified them as Level 2, chemical rockets, and metal bullets. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. Incoming transmission from the human fleet. Sarah Chen's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the bridge of the Retribution hummed with activity as her crew coordinated the attack. Surprised, Admiral? Sarah asked. You shouldn't be. Did you really think we'd stay primitive forever? While your empire was busy conquering helpless worlds, humanity was learning. We studied your technology. We improved on it. We built weapons specifically designed to kill hegemony ships. Korath watched his tactical display in horror. 3 more of his ships had been destroyed while she spoke. Who are you? He demanded. We're the people you underestimated, Sarah replied. We're the species you dismissed as insignificant. We're the tunnel rats who learned to dig between stars. And we're very, very angry. The human ships pressed their attack with a ferocity that stunned the hegemony forces. They didn't fight like civilized species. They fought like predators. When their shields failed, they rammed enemy ships. When their weapons were damaged, they improvised new ones. When outnumbered, they used tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. Admiral, Korath's flagship shuddered under repeated impacts. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by weapons that shouldn't exist and tactics that made no sense. Sir, recommend immediate withdrawal, his tactical officer urged. Withdraw? From primitives? But even as Korath spoke, another of his battleships exploded under concentrated human fire. Dr. Zenthar was still analyzing the battle data. Admiral, I figured out how they're doing this. They've been watching us for decades. Every technical manual we shared with their traders, every casual conversation about our technology, they were learning. They took our weapons and made them better. Korath stared at the scientist. Better? How? Their missiles don't just explode. They learn from each impact and adapt. Their armor doesn't just absorb energy. It converts it into power for their weapons. They've taken our technology and added something we never considered. Which is what? Human ingenuity. The battle was over in 3 hours. Of the 24 hegemony ships, only 5 escaped. The human fleet suffered minor damage and no casualties. Sarah Chen stood in her command center and surveyed the battlefield. Debris from hegemony warships glittered in the light of Ross 128's star. In the distance, Altarian refugee ships were emerging from hiding, saved from certain destruction. Message coming in from the refugee ships, reported her communications officer. They're thanking us, Admiral. Sarah nodded. Tell them they're welcome. Tell them they're under human protection now. But the real message was already spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. The footage of the battle, recorded by automated sensors, showed the impossible. A human fleet had destroyed a hegemony task force using superior technology and tactics. On the hegemony, capital world, Council member Zektar reviewed the battle recordings for the 10th time, the same Zektar who had dismissed Earth as a minor world 50 years earlier. How? He asked his intelligence chief. How did tunnel rats develop technology superior to our own? The intelligence chief, a being called Mortex, consulted his reports. Sir, we believe they've been planning this for decades. Every trade interaction, every cultural exchange, every casual conversation, they were gathering intelligence. While we saw them as harmless traders selling coffee and music, they were building the most advanced military force in known space. Zektar's 4 hands clenched into fists. Impossible. Our technology is the result of 10,000 years of development. Yes, sir. But theirs is the result of 50 years of focused effort by a species that spent their entire history fighting wars. They didn't have to develop the technology. They just had to improve what we already gave them. On his desk, a new intelligence report arrived. Human fleets had been spotted in 6 different systems, all rescuing refugees from hegemony forces. Every engagement ended the same way. Total human victory. Zektar realized the terrible truth. The hegemony hadn't just underestimated humanity's technology. They had underestimated something far more dangerous. They had underestimated humanity itself. The galaxy was about to learn what humans could do when they were angry. 2 years after the Battle of Ross 128, the war that was supposed to last weeks had consumed half the galaxy. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Fortress Terra, humanity's massive orbital defense station above Earth. Through the Transparent aluminum windows, she could see the home fleet. Thousands of ships from dozens of species all flying under the banner of the Human Alliance. The war had changed everything. Status report, Sarah ordered. Captain Martinez, her chief of staff, consulted his datapad. The siege of Hegemony Prime begins in 6 hours. Admiral Webb's fleet is in position. The Altarian survivors have provided complete intelligence on the planetary defenses. The Vorthon traders have cut off all supply lines. Even some former Hegemony worlds have joined us. Sarah nodded. It was remarkable how quickly the galaxy had turned once humanity proved the hegemony could be beaten. Species that had been terrorized for centuries suddenly found hope. Refugees became soldiers. Traders became spies. The oppressed became liberators. What about Zektar? Sarah asked, still refusing all surrender terms. His last message said, the hegemony would rather die than bow to primitive tunnel rats. Sarah almost smiled at that. The galaxy didn't call humans tunnel rats anymore. Now they use different words. Unstoppable, terrifying, brilliant. The species that couldn't even leave their solar system 50 years ago had become the most feared military force in known space. Admiral, interrupted Communications Officer Park. Incoming transmission from Admiral Korath. Sarah was surprised. Korath was the hegemony admiral who had survived Ross 128. He had become something of a nemesis, always managing to escape just before human forces arrived. Put him through. Admiral Korath's scarred face appeared on the main screen. His once proud uniform was torn and dirty. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed signs of repeated battle damage. Admiral Chen, Korath said wearily, I'm calling to offer terms. The hegemony's position is unchanged, Sarah replied. Unconditional surrender. War crimes trials for leadership. Reparations for destroyed worlds. Not the hegemony, Korath interrupted. Me. My fleet. We've had enough. Sarah studied the alien commander. 2 years of fighting humans had broken something in him. She had read the intelligence reports. Korath's forces had been defeated 17 times. Each battle had cost him ships, crew, and confidence. You're surrendering? My fleet never signed up to fight against superior technology and impossible tactics. We joined the hegemony for glory and conquest, not to be hunted across the galaxy by species we thought were beneath us. Korath's voice was bitter. You want to know the truth? We're scared. Every hegemony commander is scared. We don't know how to fight an enemy that learns from every mistake and comes back stronger. Sarah felt a moment of sympathy for the alien admiral. Terms? Safe passage to the outer rim for my crews. Full cooperation with your intelligence services. Complete technical specifications for all hegemony military systems. Korath paused. And a guarantee that we'll never have to fight humans again. Agreed. Transmit your surrender to Admiral Webb's fleet. They'll escort you to the processing center. After Korath's image faded, Captain Martinez looked puzzled. Ma'am, why accept his surrender? We could have destroyed his fleet easily. Sarah turned back to the tactical display showing the galaxy. Red zones marked hegemony territory. Blue showed human-controlled space, and green indicated neutral or allied worlds. The blue zones were expanding rapidly, because every hegemony commander who surrenders is one less we have to fight, and every surrender weakens their morale. Word spreads fast in a military organization. If Admiral Korath thinks humans are unbeatable, what does that do to the confidence of other hegemony commanders? On the display, new reports were arriving. Another hegemony world had surrendered without fighting. 3 more systems had requested human protection. The hegemony's empire was collapsing faster than their ships could retreat. Ma'am, Park announced. Admiral Webb reports ready for the final assault. Sarah activated the galaxy-wide communication system. Her words would reach every human ship, every allied vessel, every refugee camp, and yes, every hegemony world. Citizens of the galaxy, this is Admiral Sarah Chen. 2 years ago, the hegemony destroyed New City Colony and murdered 50,000 innocent people because they refused to surrender refugees to genocide. Today, we end the hegemony forever. In Sequum, space above the hegemony capital world, the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for battle. Human dreadnoughts floated beside Altarian science vessels, Vorthon merchant ships converted to carriers, and vessels from 100 other species that had found courage in humanity's example. Zektar, supreme leader of the hegemony, stood in his fortress palace and watched the approaching fleet. 10,000 years of conquest and expansion were about to end because his people had dismissed a small blue world as insignificant. Sir? his aide reported. Final message from the human fleet. Zektar's 4 hands shook with rage and fear. What do they want? They're offering you the same terms you offered New Ceti Colony. Unconditional surrender. Zektar's laugh was bitter. And if we refuse? The aide hesitated. They say they'll do to us what we did to the Altarians. For the first time in his long life, Zektar understood real fear. The humans had proven they could destroy worlds when necessary. They had turned entire star systems into graveyards. But they had also proven something else. They protected the innocent and punished the guilty with equal determination. Open a channel to the human fleet, Zektar ordered. Sarah Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked older than in the early war broadcasts, marked by 2 years of constant battle. But her eyes held the same determination that had carried humanity from a single world to galactic dominance. Admiral Chen, Zektar said, you have won. But I must ask, what did we do wrong? How did tunnel rats from a minor world defeat the greatest empire in galactic history? Sarah considered the question seriously. You made 3 mistakes, Zektar. First, you underestimated us because we were different. You saw our conflicts and diversity as weakness instead of strength. Second, you attacked innocent people under our protection. Nothing makes humans more dangerous than threatening those we've promised to defend. And the third mistake? Sarah's expression hardened. You never understood what you were fighting. You thought you were at war with a primitive species from one world. You weren't. You were fighting an idea. The idea that bullies should be stopped, that the weak should be protected, and that no one has the right to commit genocide just because they're stronger. She paused, looking directly at him through the screen. Ideas are harder to kill than ships, Zektar, and this idea has spread to every world in the galaxy. Even if you destroyed every human tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. The galaxy has changed. Your way of ruling through fear and force is finished forever. Zektar looked out at the massive fleet surrounding his world. Ships from hundreds of species united by human leadership and human ideals. The tunnel rats had indeed changed everything. What happens to my people? He asked. Those who committed war crimes will face trial. The rest will have a chance to rebuild their lives in a galaxy where strength is used to protect, not to conquer. Sarah's voice softened slightly. We're not going to do to you what you did to others. That's not who we are. The surrender was signed 3 hours later. As hegemony forces laid down their weapons across the galaxy, Sarah Chen returned to Earth's surface for the first time in 2 years. She walked through the parks of New Geneva, watching children play, under alien stars that were no longer sources of fear but of wonder. The galaxy was free. Refugees were returning home. Trade routes were reopening. Species that had been enslaved for generations were learning to govern themselves again. But the real victory wasn't military. It was the proof that cooperation could triumph over conquest, that diversity was stronger than uniformity, and that sometimes the smallest voice in the room, the voice of conscience, could change everything. In the museums of New Ceti Colony, rebuilt as a monument to the 50,000 who had died, children from dozens of worlds learned about the day humans first said no to tyranny. They learned about courage, sacrifice, and the power of standing up for what was right. The galaxy had called Earth a minor world. Now they called it home. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now elderly and serving as the galaxy's first interspecies cultural director, updated her files on humanity one final time. Species, human. Classification, protectors of the innocent. Threat level, extreme to those who abuse power. Protection level, absolute for those who seek sanctuary. Status, no longer underestimated by anyone. She paused, then added one final note. They were never just tunnel rats. They were gardeners, waiting for the right time to help the galaxy grow into something better. The stars shone down on a galaxy at peace, watched over by the species that had once been dismissed as too primitive to matter. Never again would the galaxy make that mistake.